I'm here today talking to somebody who means a lot to me. She is my therapist, but then I ran away a couple of times, came back, left again.
For the girl clients.
And now I don't know if I'm back or not, but I've been trying to have her talk to me for a long time now, and I'm glad this has happened at this time. Yes. Patrina,
Hi.
thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
All right. So you are a clinical psychologist. Yes. And how long have you been doing this?
About 8 years now.
8 years. Okay. All right. Perfect. 8 years. One thing I really wanted us to talk about today was grief. And it's a difficult subject for a lot of people. Me, myself, I've experienced it, I think, 3 times since 2021. And a lot of people have found it challenging. Yeah. So there are stages of grief that I'm aware about. Can you walk us through?
Okay. So, I mean, maybe I'll start by saying that oftentimes when we think about grief, we usually restrict it to the loss of a loved one, right? If someone dies. But then grief can be experienced on different levels. The loss of a relationship, loss of a job, career opportunities, and so on and so forth. But then the stages of grief that we commonly know are, I'll kind of talk about them not in the order they are usually presented, because previously people assume that initially the first stage is like denial, like this can't be me. How did this happen? I can't believe I'm going through this, right? And then people move on to the next stage where it's bargaining, then there's anger, depression, and acceptance. And it was assumed that you go through these in, sequence, and by the time you get to acceptance, it means you've kind of worked through the grief. But it's very clear that that's not the case. You can experience them in any order. You can experience them at different times. You can get to a point where you think you've worked through your grief, or you have worked through it, but you have moments of still shock and denial, right? So with the first stage, which is the shock and denial, like I said, is how could this happen? This can't be me. Am I dreaming? I'm hoping this is not true, right? And then the bargaining stage is where you try to make sense of the situation. And sometimes it's the maybe, and we've had a conversation like that. Maybe if I had done this, maybe if I'd arrived sooner, maybe if I had taken them to a different hospital, or maybe if I had begged the person a little more, they would have stayed with me. So you're trying to make sense of it, you're trying to bargain. And sometimes if it's in the context of something outside of death, bargaining can look like, oh, if you come back, I'll do this, I'll do X, Y, Z. But then anger can ensue from that, because there's not much you can do about the situation, especially when it comes to the loss of a loved one through death, right? The helplessness of it all. So a lot of people experience that stage of just being angry, sometimes at themselves, at the world, at the person, at God. That's also another big one. Then there's a depression, the deep sadness that comes with experiencing grief. And these stages, mind you, too, can occur 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 years. It varies. There's no there's no formula for it. Then there's the assumption that once you've allowed yourself to feel the sadness and, go through it, then you get to the stage of acceptance.
Yes.
Where it's like, okay, this has happened. Life has to go on. I need to find my new normal. But again, like I said, you can start off with acceptance. Sometimes you can go through something and you're like, okay, no, it's happened. Let's plan the funeral. Let's get things done type of thing. Then after the fact, everything comes rushing in, So we shouldn't assume that you have to go through them one after the other. This one is 2 years. This one is 3 months. There's no such thing.
All right. In your line of work, what are some of the common misconceptions you found that happens within the African context?
Time, like I said before, there's people tell me they've heard comments like, after all this time, you're still crying. You should be okay by now. We run a grief group, my colleague and I, Dr. Carol, during the COVID time, because a lot of people had lost loved ones. And there was somebody in there who had lost her dad 10 years prior, right? And someone had lost her father that same month. There is no timestamp on grieving. But the interesting thing is that generally speaking, as time goes on, the pain is supposed to feel less painful. But that also depends on what processing you've done, what work you've done around it, what peace you've made with it. Some people shelve things, and then years later, that's when it comes and they have to begin the grief process. So
I was gonna ask, so what happens in the case in which instead of time making it better to cope with, it rather makes it worse?
So in that situation, it will be important for the person to kind of explore what's going on there, because usually it could be, maybe there's regret, right? That maybe there was a problem in the relationship and they didn't reconcile. The person is gone. Maybe they feel like it's their fault and they've been harboring that for years. So it really depends on what's going on with that person. But yeah, that it can exist.
All right. When you see clients dealing with grief, do you find out that men take it differently from women? And if you do, what are some of the things you noticed?
As in your case, am I allowed to say that? Oh, no.
Okay, use me as a guinea pig.
No. Generally speaking, men tend to be avoidant when it comes to talking about vulnerable emotions.
I feel like you're talking to me directly.
Not just you, okay. Right? Generally speaking, because in our society, you have to be tough. You have to be strong for the women around you. You know, those are the types of things that the feedback you receive. And so I find that majority of the time, unless they have a very safe space or they feel comfortable doing so, they always appear stoic, like, okay, I'm getting through it. They look grim, but you don't see the breakdown and the crying and as much as you do with female clients. But when given the opportunity, they're able to tap into those, very painful.
And the women, do they deal with it easier?
Easier.
Or better, for lack of a better choice of words?
I think, and I say this with a lot of caution, I think yes, because women, again, are socialized to lean on support systems, to talk about how they feel, to cry more. And so they tend to confront all the stuff that is going on with their grief a lot better than men do. But it's not the case for everybody, but generally speaking, yeah. Okay,
all right. Is there a correct way to grieve or to approach grief?
Yes and no. Ideally, you're supposed to approach grief in healthy ways, right? But there is no one fixed way that's the correct way to approach grief, no. Some people will do a lot of writing about the pain that they feel, and that's the way they let it out. Some people scream, and as we see, they roll on the floor and stuff like that. Some people cry, right? Some people lash out in anger. The most important thing, or the most correct way to deal with grief, is to have a point in time where you can actually talk about what it is you are actually feeling and going through. So it doesn't have to look how everybody expects it to look like, but it is necessary that you're able to process, talk through it, and lean on support. At least have one place where you can be completely vulnerable about what's going on with you.
So what happens when you don't have a place or a person you can be completely vulnerable? The reason why I'm asking that is you realize that in our culture, there's a lot of shouldering responsibility and not enough talking about how you feel. And then what happens is it becomes bottled up emotions. So what happens if you don't have that sort of safe space?
First, I will challenge whoever feels that way or thinks that way, because I have also realized that sometimes that comes from the fear of actually being vulnerable. It's not that there isn't anyone you can talk to, but you just don't feel comfortable going there. There almost always is, and I'm saying almost always is, at least one person that you can actually be vulnerable with and open up to. And that would only work if you're willing to go there.
Yeah, it works theoretically, but practically, I mean, talking about my experience, you realize that you, quote unquote, as a man, you're not allowed to vent out your emotions. And also, you find out that during the preparation stage for the funeral, there's so many things you have to do that there's not enough time for yourself to process your emotions.
Yes. So the timing doesn't have to be when it happens. And that's why I was saying for some people, it's let's plan things, let's get things done, let's, order the tents, the chairs, all of those things. And sometimes it even helps to lessen the blow of the loss. But when it's all said and done, and lots of people have also shared this with me, when it's all said and done, when everybody goes and then it's quiet, you are confronted with what you are feeling. And it's those moments that I encourage people to take advantage of, any safe space they have to open up.
Is it normal to have depressive episodes after grief?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. During, after, yes.
So when grief happens,
Mm-hmm.
the first week it's more apparent because it's just happened.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say you cried that or you mourn the person during that week.
Mm-hmm.
Does it often come back later on after you've gone through that first week?
You mean the tears?
The tears, the mourn, the loss, everything.
Okay. Grief, as we said in the beginning, it's not linear. There's no, I'm done grieving. Because especially if the person is an integral part of your life, you will start to experience life without them in ways that you wouldn't have known in the first week, right? And sometimes those things can trigger that feeling again. So it could be you end up going to a place that you guys went some time back and then the feelings come up. It's okay and it's normal. It shouldn't feel like, I thought I cried it out. What's wrong with me? Why am I still crying? No, that's actually very normal.
All right.
So, yeah.
So apart from talking to somebody who you're vulnerable with, what are some other healthy ways to process grief?
Writing is a very big one. Writing what you think, what you feel. And usually when people are writing, I always say this thing. There's this mindset of if someone finds this and reads it, right?
Mm-hmm.
What will it be like? If you're going to engage in writing either on your phone or in a book, let it be one that you can kind of keep to yourself, because that's one of the places that you should be the most authentic with yourself. I've had people open up to me and share that the loss of a loved one was very painful for them. And then on the other hand, there was relief because the person was suffering, right? And the lady said something. She said, I can't imagine saying this to people because it will seem like, how can you say this about your own mom, type of thing. Because those feelings are real and they are valid. So writing is helpful. Sometimes writing to the person. And this is one that people can find very difficult, but also very healing. So at the end of the day, they'll come back from work or school or whatever it is and then say, today I went here. Ideally, we would have gone together, but you're not here. I miss you every day. Can you imagine TJ came, he was wearing a blue shirt with gray trousers, like as though you are interacting with the person. And it can feel a little less lonely. So people have recommended that to have eventually, when they've been able to do it, have come back with feedback that it's been really helpful.
All right. Backpacking on what you were saying, I was just wondering the role of support systems, the people around you, because one thing that was difficult for me was the constant narration of the story. You're trying to put that away, but I think it's a cultural norm. People call you and, how did it happen? And for the first 2 weeks, all you're doing is narrating the same story to people. What are some of the roles that support systems can play?
They can be. We have a collectivist, society, and that can be helpful. People helping you to plan, people bringing you food so you don't have to worry about food, things like that. But there's also the downside to it, like you're saying. We don't exercise tact when it comes to these things, understanding that it's difficult for them. When you reach out, you're supposed to offer your condolences and offer help. Later down the line, you can either ask someone else or ask the person what happened. But to your point, you'll be telling the story over and over again. One that I find particularly bothersome is the one that those who have lost someone, when they are required to sit and greet people, because people have come to greet you, but you're in pain and you're supposed to sit there because it's not nice if you don't sit out there to greet them. I think that's a little unfair to people who are mourning. So that's another one. But support systems are very important. Like I said, if you have a safe space, especially when you're going through the process of even planning the funeral, relatives come up with ridiculous requests, ideas. Let's carry the body here. Let's do this. Spend this amount. They're not bringing the money. Things like that. Having a place to even vent about those things is very helpful. And I encourage people to rather than isolate, lean on the people that you can actually count on during those times the most.
All right. How do you, as a business owner or an entrepreneur, how do you deal with shouldering your responsibility whilst going through depressive episodes of grief? Because time doesn't stop.
No, it doesn't.
And it's such a shame, because at times when you're dealing with heavy stuff, you wish that, maybe it's just me, but I wish that time will stop, at least so that you can catch a break. But you realize that a sun will come up whatever happens. How do you manage to deal with all those?
There's, again, just like most things in life, there is no hard, fast rule. There's no one size fits all. So again, leaning on your support system, very, very important. We underestimate the power of having a safe space or actually allowing yourself to be vulnerable enough. And so let me just give you this example. I remember there was a point in my life where I used to hold a lot of things in. And it was because a part of me felt like, you're a therapist. You're going to go and tell your friend that you're struggling with this. I mean, she'll lose respect for you because you are the one who helps people figure things out. So you should be able to figure this out. But I'm human first, right?
Sure.
And it wasn't until I allowed myself to be completely vulnerable that, listen, now when I'm in a tough spot, I don't hesitate to pick up the phone. And anyone who has experienced that will completely understand what I mean by when you have a safe space and you lean into it. It's one of the best places. Again, sometimes the restriction is, I can't really talk to people. But there are people there that you can talk to. Sometimes it's the fear that holds us back. Right?
Sometimes it's, apart from the fear, it's also the judgment. This person that I'm pouring into, what's the person going to think about me?
Exactly.
Or
yes.
My whole life, I've been a tough guy. Now, after I tell this person how I'm feeling, will it lower the person's image of me?
Absolutely. And that's what I was saying I also went through. But the person that I selected that person because you don't just get up and say, okay, let me pick this person to be my safe space. You kind of assess what life has been like with that person, how they've shown up for you. So you don't just pick any friend and decide that they'll be your safe space, or any family member or coworker. You kind of have to have some evidence to show that, okay, there's something trustworthy about this person. And then you take the risk.
Risks may either go well or not.
It may either go well or not.
So regardless, you should still take the risk.
I mean, everything we do, we take risks. We take risks in business.
But calculate the risk. How do you calculate it to make sure that you make
someone who's trustworthy, at least someone that you have some background, information about.
Okay.
That.
All right, perfect.
So leaning on your support system, and then also as an entrepreneur, I will also challenge, anyone who might be going through that. There's always this assumption of I can't take time, but there's so many other things that we take time for: girls' trip, boys' trip, right? Family vacations,
Netflix.
Church convention, Netflix. So sometimes it's actually possible to just take, if it's a few days, right? If sometimes you need to unplug, it's possible to do that.
Right.
But we tell ourselves, I can't, when really it's not that I can't, I prefer not to.
Okay.
So taking time off too is possible, and if it is, I highly recommend that.
All right. You highly recommend that. I've been to therapy.
Yes, you have.
And what happened?
And you want me to?
Yeah,
I can put your business out there.
Am I not your best student, client?
The fact that you've asked this
or the
question,
most talented?
No, so here's the thing about therapy.
Yes.
And I plan to talk about this, at another time.
Oh, no, we can.
It's like saying going to a doctor cures your illness. If I go and see a doctor and the doctor says, take these tablets, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, 2 in the evening, 3 days, and then I take it for 1.5 days, or I don't take it at all, will I say the medical field doesn't work, or the doctor is not good at what they do? One of the things about therapy is people assume that when I come to therapy, everything gets fixed. Therapy is not for the weak, because when you come here, you have to face the difficult things that you don't want to face. And that's why a lot of people run away from therapy.
I can see you eyeballing.
Because it requires you to do uncomfortable things, acknowledge maybe behaviors that may not be healthy in you, or choices you're making that are contributing to the very thing that you need therapy to help you with. So I highly recommend it, but only if you're willing to do the work and actually face yourself.
What if in some periods you don't want to be codependent on the therapy? And I've heard of that happening.
Yes.
You become somehow warped into always continuous therapy.
Two things about that. If you recognize that yourself, then challenge yourself to work through that. Maybe even talk to your therapist. I have clients who will do sessions for maybe a month, 2 months, 3 months, sometimes 6, a year, and then say, I want to take a break and practice the tools, right? So that's something that you can do. You're not supposed to be in therapy for the rest of your life if you don't want to be. The whole goal is you come, you have a safe space to talk about stuff, but you also get tools to help you navigate the world out there. So there's that piece, but there's also the piece where your therapist should also be able to recognize that. And we do recognize that sometimes with clients, where it's, I can't fix anything unless I talk to my therapist, And when we recognize that too, we help the clients to work through it, provide them with tools to navigate.
Well, I know people who, through grief, have developed anxiety attacks. And these are people who, prior to the grief, were doing okay. Had no idea what chronic anxiety was, or these memories. It's like the memories somehow fight them. And then when it's being replayed inside their heads, it drives up their anxiety.
Yeah. Or even sounds, smells, things trigger. Especially those who lose a loved one through something traumatic. If they go in a pretty traumatic way or suddenly, those can be pretty tough on a person. So I guess what I want to know is, are you asking if it's normal, or how does a person navigate?
First of all, is it normal?
Very. Completely normal.
How does one navigate through challenges such as those?
Is to, again, acknowledge. Don't try and suppress. The moment you notice it, describe it to yourself. Okay, I realize that every time I smell nkatse, I think about my wife, because that was her favorite soup, right? Or if I hear this sound, this is what happens. And sometimes it requires you to also be observant, because sometimes it will hit you and you won't realize that it was triggered by something, right? Letting yourself know that it's normal, as I've said. A lot of the things we don't normalize, we think, why? What's wrong with me? First of all, being able to tell yourself that, no, I lost somebody that I care about, or I lost something that I care about. It's very, very normal for me to feel the way I'm feeling, right? It's my brain's way of sometimes even protecting us, that anxiety that you feel. Because what it's trying to do is it's trying to anticipate something bad happening and using that cue to try and get you to avoid it, even though it's already happened. So navigating it, first of all, normalize it. Secondly, talk to someone about it. It could be someone in your personal life or a professional. The writing really helps. If you're religious, you can pray about it as well.
What if you're naturally avoidant and dismissive of those feelings when they come up? What happens?
Okay. You're going to have to do some work around that, because that's the truth. You prolong the healing process the more you avoid.
Okay.
And there's something very interesting about mental and emotional health. If you don't deal with it or process it or heal, it will find a way to manifest itself in the physical. And I know it sounds like, exactly. Yeah. But because of time, I would explain the chemical processes that take place in the brain. That I am shishia that you feel, that anxiety attack, it's not just a feeling hanging in the air. There are chemicals that are being released in your body that lead to that. And those chemicals are often triggered by the types of thoughts that we have. So your thinking can affect your physical health. And so that's why they call things like hypertension a lifestyle disorder. Apart from what you eat, the way you think and how you manage your stress levels and things like that can gravely affect your physical health. So if you don't deal with it, it will find another way to confront you.
But that requires a lot of strength and vulnerability within yourself.
Strength. And I'm glad you said that, especially for the men who are listening to this, because the assumption is that you are weak if you acknowledge that you're going through these things. But it rather requires bravery and strength. It's easy to avoid because out of fear, exactly. It's rather harder to face it. So yeah, you're right.
All right. So that brings me on to another thing that you and we've discussed several times right here in this office. The big V word, vulnerability. I mean, I understand it a different way. How do you understand it?
How do you understand it?
The possibility of opening up yourself to your own emotions and internal reflections, and opening up yourself to fallibility. That's how I understand it. But it also leaves a bad taste in my mouth because it reminds me of my own weakness and places in which I need to grow. So I sort of don't like that word. That's my understanding. Am I right?
That's very insightful. Yeah.
True, but is it right?
It is, absolutely, definitely. Okay. Vulnerability does do that, depending on what it is you're being vulnerable about. But usually, I think what causes discomfort for people is often when you're vulnerable, when we talk about it in this case, it means you're kind of being vulnerable with someone else. And there's always that thing of, I'm making myself, or I'm opening myself to the potential of some kind of hurt or some kind of, the risk of being hurt on some level. Because that's what, when you say you've left, let's say you've left your house vulnerable to thieves, it means anyone can intrude. So I think that's where a lot of the fear, the discomfort also comes, because if I open up to you and I tell you these things, will you use it against me?
Which we often see happening.
Yes, we do. That's why when you're selecting who it is you're being vulnerable with, you have to be very intentional about it.
So why is it that so many of us associate vulnerability with weakness, especially when you're put into positions of power?
That's society for you, right? The discomfort of it. Here's one very interesting thing. If a person with power has a certain mindset, people who follow them are likely to develop that mindset or adopt it because that's the type of messaging they'll put out there. So if I'm a man and I'm uncomfortable with vulnerability, right, and I rationalize and tell myself, because it's weakness, what am I going to be putting out there? I'll be telling other men, you have to be strong, you have to, you don't do this, you don't. And if they look up to me, they pick that up. So it's really socialization. Sometimes people will say things like, oh, men are emotionally stronger than women and things like that. Especially from the work I do, there's no such thing. Men are human, first and foremost. Society has told them countless times that their strength is in suppressing, their strength is in denying their feelings. And look at it this way, and this is how messed up I think it is. Young boys, when they are sad, they cry. When they are afraid, they cry. Right? They run to their father, their older sibling, their mom, uncle, auntie, and if there's something bothering them, they talk about it. Which means that biologically speaking, it's not a thing that men don't cry as much as women, because little boys cry. But as they are growing, there's feedback in shaping them. Why are you crying? Are you a girl? So what are you crying for? How is it going to change the situation? Right? And so I'm very passionate about this for men. I think that when it comes to being vulnerable, it's not weakness. It's rather strength, like I've said before, because it's easy to avoid. It's easy to not talk about it. If talking about it creates some anxiety or fear or discomfort, it means it requires bravery. So vulnerability is not weak. It's actually brave. So
amongst the clients you see, what's the role of gender and vulnerability? Women more quick on the draw to share when they come here, or men?
No, obviously women.
Women. Okay.
So, but socialization, right? It's not it's not a biological thing. It's how society has raised. It's okay for women to cry because it's soft. It's it's weak, and then the strong men are supposed to like be stoic and not show. But it's not it's not biological in any way, shape, or form.
All right. So, I mean, what are some signs you notice when someone is not easily vulnerable or struggling to be vulnerable?
Okay.
Yeah.
Deflection is a big one. They'll try and change the topic and talk about other things, or they will bring up a topic and then want to like stay on that particular one when they realize that there's a potential for this to happen. Sometimes they will laugh it off. Sometimes they will dismiss, but it's nothing, it's not that deep. Yeah, it is what it is. Those are common signs of discomfort with being vulnerable.
Are there some exercises or tools that can help you become more vulnerable? Because it doesn't come naturally.
No.
For me, for example,
people, yes.
it's one of the last things I like to think about.
Start small. So when you find your person that you think is a safe space for you, start small. Start with like something that requires vulnerability but is not so nerve-wracking for you. That's one good exercise. Another very good one is actually sitting with yourself in that vulnerability, because oftentimes people who are avoidant in talking about these things with others often don't allow themselves to also process it, because when it starts to come up and there's discomfort, they will either turn the TV on, make a phone call, do anything to distract from it. So starting with yourself, acknowledging whatever it is you're feeling, saying it to yourself, writing about it, is actually a very good step in practicing being able to do that with someone else.
All right, that's interesting. Another thing that I've been wanting us to speak about, and we have spoken about, would be imposter syndrome.
Okay.
What are some signs of imposter syndrome?
Often, the interesting thing about imposter syndrome is majority of the signs are internal.
Okay.
So being in a room and thinking, did these people, when will they discover that I'm a fraud? I don't belong here, right? Did they read my CV properly? If they did, I don't think they would have wanted me here. Can I do this? Am I actually really capable of achieving XYZ? So a lot of it is internal, self-talk. And then sometimes externally it will be not taking up certain opportunities.
Because you're wondering if you're good enough.
Exactly.
Okay.
Downplaying the things that you have achieved or done that are, noteworthy. That's another example. Another one too could be always feeling the need to defer to someone else or get someone else's opinion on the thing you've done, someone you think is successful. Because I don't belong here, if this person agrees to it, then it makes it okay. So
do high achievers have more imposter syndrome, or that's just hearsay?
There's some truth in that, because for you to have imposter syndrome, it means you believe that you are in a space or achieving certain things that you don't think you are qualified for. Okay. Exactly. And that requires you to have achieved those things. And so oftentimes you will see imposter syndrome happen with high achievers.
Is it also a fiction created by society? It comes naturally with self-doubt? How does...
So it's very linked to self-doubt. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
All right. So you did say that imposter syndrome is as a result of self-doubt. How do you combat that?
Okay. So
are there people who are just born that way?
No, actually. Do you know the most confident age group?
No.
Take a guess.
Babies.
Well, babies.
Infancy.
Exactly, right. Little kids, toddlers. Yeah. They are the most confident group of people you come across. They'll come, Mommy, look, I can do this. Then they'll do this, and you're looking at them like, it's not that deep. But you're like, wow, good job. They're so proud of themselves. They draw something from the adult standpoint, we're looking at it like, "Ooh, this thing looks ridiculous," but keep it up type of thing, because you want to encourage them to. They are the most confident age group you'll come across. And you see, this is why I want us to what I want us to understand about mental health and well-being and our sense of self is that a lot of it is through socialization. Because when you take little kids, they are who they are, right? They come in most of the time as things are supposed to be, and then we tell them this is okay, this is not okay, this is. So you take this confident group of people, and as they are growing up, the child shows you the drawing, and then you say, oh, it's nice, but look at the ear. The ear is so big. They draw another thing. Oh, okay, not bad, but maybe make the leg look like this. Gradually, because they look up to you as an older sibling, as a parent, as a teacher, whatever it is, they start to internalize your feedback, and it starts to become theirs. Right? The beliefs that we have, our religion, all of those things, it was passed down to us. And now we say, oh, I believe this, as though it's ours. But it's only because somebody taught it to you. So when it comes to self-doubt, first of all, it's very important for us to understand that you are not born that way. Feedback from society that we've internalized through no fault of ours often leads to that.
So everything sort of goes back to your childhood and upbringing.
A lot of things, yeah, primarily because that's a programming stage. That's the bedrock, the first examples of everything you see: friendship, marriage, family relationships. All of those things are in those years. So it downloads into your subconscious.
So once you've noticed that you struggle with
self-doubt, what to do?
Yes, what do you do?
First of all, I'm glad that you said notice, because the key is to be able to notice.
To notice.
One very helpful one is affirmations. I know a lot of people have heard it and it's like, ugh, this affirmations thing. When I heard it the first time, I was like, what kind of hippie nonsense is this? I am love, I am light, I am right. Until I decided to read a bit more about it, and then I realized how deeply affected we can be by affirmations, the things that we say and we profess intentionally. That's what an affirmation is. It's an intentional, healthy or positive statement that we're saying to ourselves or kind of putting in our subconscious. There's actually a biological connection to that as well, because your brain doesn't know the difference between reality and imagination.
Okay.
It's why you can watch a horror movie sitting on your couch and still feel scared. You should be fine because you're safe, but somehow you feel the fear. Everything your mind tells your brain, it takes as reality. It's your mind that knows the difference between reality and imagination. So if my mind is telling my brain, oh, I'm not good at this, oh, I'm not good at this, your brain will release whatever chemicals are associated with somebody who's not good enough for something in a room where they're supposed to be good enough for it, hence anxiety.
You said mind and brain. What was the difference?
One is physical, one is matter, and the other one is, gosh, I don't know is the
seat of thought?
Yes, it is a seat of thought. So it's like a projection. I don't know. That's a very interesting question. So seat of thought. So they are not one and the same, but they need each other to exist.
Okay. So the brain is the mechanical.
Yes, exactly.
But then the mind is what you input into the brain.
Exactly. And also vice versa. Things that happen in the brain can also lead to the thoughts that we have. Right. Yeah.
So if we're looking at it in terms of code and programming, then the brain will be the computer and then the mind will be the code into the computer.
Interesting. Yes, absolutely. That's a very good analogy.
See, I told you I was a good student.
Yeah. So anyway, as I was saying about affirmations, the more you are intentional, you pick the thing that you struggle. So if it's self-doubt, you build affirmations that are geared specifically to self-doubt. If it's in a specific area, you tailor your affirmations to that specific area, right? And it's not just that you're going to say it. So sometimes people will say things to me like, if I feel like I'm lying, it's not true. Because if I say I'm confident, I can speak in front of people when I can't, that's a lie, right? One of the things I share is to add I'm learning to be, or I'm learning to. It makes it easier for us to do that. So I'm learning to be confident. I'm learning to take up opportunities that challenge me, right? My growth and my worth is not dependent on how I perform in this one thing. I am not afraid to make mistakes because they don't define me. A mistake in this situation is not going to be life-threatening for me. So saying those things to yourself and being intentional, you have to bombard your brain with it if you are going to reprogram how it works. It's not a one and done thing. It's a daily thing.
So there's a lot of responsibility lies on us with the words and the words we say each day. Absolutely. To ourselves and to others.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's
Our
so
choice of words.
powerful. Absolutely. I used to joke that, or I still joke that my self-confidence, if having none is zero, I was in the negatives, arrears. And in being intentional about that work, I'm yet to enter a room lately that I feel like I'm less than. I may be less qualified, which is an objective truth. It doesn't mean I don't belong in there. It doesn't mean I can't learn from the people in there. It doesn't make me less than.
So the only worry I have is sometimes you see people with no self-doubt. Once they manage to break out of that barrier, then it's too much self-promotion.
Is that what they told you, or that's what you see?
That's what I've seen.
Yes.
You know, I think there's the fine line between self-doubt and becoming a narcissist at a certain point.
No.
It can't be that way.
Yeah. I even the narcissist expression, I think people don't fully understand what it is, and we throw it around a bit too much.
Oh,
right?
break it down for us then.
Another time, because it's a disorder on its own, right? But when it comes to self-doubt, you will even find it's a very cultural thing. We have this false modesty thing we do in our culture.
You have to be seen or heard.
Or if someone compliments you, you can't say, oh, like if I say,
you can't own them compliments.
Thank you.
Yeah. Because
then it means you are being proud. No.
Yeah.
When you are using that as a point of comparison to think you are better than other people, that's when it's problematic. But if someone says, oh, you did very well with this project. In fact, this is the best project I've seen so far. Oh, thank you. I really worked hard on it. So I'm glad that you like the project, or I'm glad that my hard work came through. Does that make me arrogant?
No, it doesn't. But like, again, you're saying it's boils down to programming. Because for me, even in professional or social circles, you find out that people compliment you. Oh, chairman, this your this thing like this. Or, oh, I'm learning from you. Or maybe
oh, you be the boss.
Yeah,
you
know.
Man.
Yeah, you told me. It's hard to just accept it wholeheartedly and to move on without you feeling as though, you know what, don't you think you're doing a bit too much? Yeah.
So we have to practice. You have to learn to be able to sit with the discomfort. I know you're tired of hearing me say this.
I've been tired for 4 years.
But sitting with the discomfort of when you are, in as much as you're trying to do a healthy or positive thing, because your brain is not used to it, you will feel anxious. So just because you're on a path to doing something better doesn't mean that, oh, because of that, my brain will be okay with it and it will feel like, no, sometimes it will fight you on it. So someone compliments you and everything in you wants to say, oh, this old thing, or I hear. Holding your tongue and saying, thank you very much, I appreciate that. Despite the discomfort. As time goes on, it gets better.
All right. So apart from affirmations, what else can you do to enhance positive self-image?
Another thing is your choices have to align with that. So I can't say that I'm learning to be confident and speak, in front of people, right, without breaking down or without running away. And then when an opportunity comes up for you to give a talk, oh, no, I can't do it, fix someone else. You have to act to complement the affirmation. So that's also another key part of things. The third thing is be very mindful of comparison. That's a big part of it all, because a lot of it comes from comparison. Right?
We find it everywhere. Professional, social circles. This one's doing it like this. Why can't you do it like this? And the thing that irks me the most, or I find uncomfortable, is right before someone compares. It's like the issue, a caveat. Oh, I'm not comparing, but
everything that comes before the but is negative. We all know that. So once you say I'm not comparing, but you are going on to compare.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is difficult to do because again, that's how we've been socialized. Look at your friend. Those who got A in this subject, do they have two heads?
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. So it's normal that we will do that. It requires you to again be very intentional about when you catch yourself doing that, what you're saying back to yourself, that my path is different from this person's. I admire what they've done, but I'm not going to compare myself to them. I'm going to chart my own path, right? Because a lot of the time, Jonathan, when we compare, we don't even have the full picture.
That is true.
We don't have the full picture. You may be entry level at a company, and it's like your colleagues at your level are driving cars. Maybe they came from families where there's family money. You are the first person to go to university. So if you look at them and you say, they are driving cars, look at me, why don't I have a car? That comparison is not even realistic because you don't have the same background. Some people have certain responsibilities. They are taking care of their families and their children and things like that. And then they are in the university as well. Whereas other people, their parents are paying for the university for them. So when we are comparing, we should be very mindful. Sometimes people also achieve the things that we think make them better than us in dubious ways that we would never engage in. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. So oftentimes comparison is not even, it's false because it's not based on the truth, because you never have a full picture.
It's false, but I mean, as far as your mind can see, it tells you that no, you should have, a certain level of achievement at this point in time. Mm-hmm. Or if you're 30 plus, this should have been your path. Then you start feeling, incompetent.
Mm-hmm. The important thing about that is to look back at yourself. If you're going to compare to yourself.
Okay. So make comparisons only with yourself.
And be honest with yourself, even with those comparisons, right? Because there's a time in your life where, let's say, you were earning 5,000 cedis. Then you got married and you had a child. Now you're paying school fees. You're buying diapers. You're doing... So to feel like I should be able to do the same things I was doing when I had 5,000 cedis, now that I have responsibilities, is also not realistic. So even when you're doing the internal or the self-comparison, you have to be honest, but also challenge yourself. So sometimes it's a matter of, okay, I understand that I'm here financially because I also haven't been making the best financial decisions, right? I'm spending my money on XYZ. So going forward, I'm going to cut back on this. Going forward, I'll invest more. So it also requires you to be honest if there's something that you need to improve on.
Right.
But yeah, I would say it's not easy to do, but if you're intentional again, and then on a daily basis, you make that decision to refocus on, okay, I won't compare with another person. I will take inspiration from them, but I won't use that to feel less than them. That can be very helpful.
Okay. When you lose a loved one, for example, I know someone in my production team lost a loved one with kids. And he's wondering, how does he tell the kids when they finally get to an age where they can process their thoughts about their mom?
Okay. Which means at this stage, they're too young to have...
They're way too young to grasp.
Okay. I think it starts from him, and you said he, right?
Yes.
I think it will start from him getting to a point where he is able to talk about her, even to other people or to himself, or write about it. As he gets comfortable with that, as time goes on, talking to the children about their mother would be a little less difficult. The first times may be tough, right? But as time goes on, as long as it's important, as long as he has been intentional about being able to think about her and talk about her, because sometimes some people will avoid the mere thought of it because it's too painful, it's too sad. And this is what I mean by allowing yourself to grieve, going through the process. So if he starts that way, he'll give himself quite a bit of foundation to be able to talk to the kids about it.
Patrina, I know your time is very precious to you. You're booked and busy, and it's hard to get a hold of you these days.
I'm supposed to say, no, I'm not.
No, but that's the truth. That's the truth.
It's the truth.
I remember as soon as, if I miss one meeting with you, it takes me like a week to get another one. That's something that used to tick me off. I'm like, why?
A week.
Yeah,
complaining about a week.
You're busy. You're busy as hell. You're
Other
busy
people
as
are
hell.
complaining about longer wait.
Longer wait up. I hope I get preferential treatment. No, you treat everybody the same. Okay, all right, no problem. So, what's been front of mind for you? You. I mean, every time you ask me how I'm doing, what I'm going through, I'm asking you the questions now. What's
I was so lost.
What's been on your mind lately? You as a person.
Sleep.
Really, but you sleep?
Truly.
Okay.
And I mean that's because of the stage of the life of
I
life
see.
I am.
Yeah.
I have a baby now,
Yeah.
so yeah.
You're short on sleep.
Seriously. Yeah.
That's not helpful.
Why?
I mean, for your mental health, like sleep is everything.
Sometimes it depends on what the sleep deprivation too is or why it's. Yes, initially I was struggling.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting better, and so every time there's a bit of a lapse, I tell myself that it's going to get better, and it helps, right? So, yeah, I'm in a much better space than the early days.
Oh, the early days is terrible.
It's
You get no
rough.
sleep at
It's
all.
ghetto.
Yeah. You're always up. You're getting like 3 or 4 hours, and if you don't get enough sleep, it's hard to function the next day.
That's the thing. You're snapping at people.
Yeah, you're feeling sick.
See, the thing about sleep too is that if you have control or you have the ability to remedy sleeplessness and you don't, the effects of it are usually when you are maybe 40s, 50s, and the illnesses that come up, because sleep is, you are a human being.
Yeah.
It was hardwired into you for a reason. There's so many processes that happen in your body and in your brain when you are asleep. Toxins that are removed from your system while you're sleeping.
That's how your body recharges.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that thing about I can survive on 2 hours of sleep, you're bragging now, but
Lay down.
something is waiting for you.
That's true. Caffeine and sleep. What do you?
What?
Caffeine and sleep. You don't get enough sleep, and then you drown yourself in a cup of coffee the next day.
I think you know the answer to that.
I'm a newbie.
Yes, obviously not.
Okay.
And anxiety as well. If you struggle with anxiety, coffee, you should try and stay away from coffee. That's just an added.
Okay, all right, no problem. All right, thank you so much, Petrina.
My pleasure.